Oh, wow.
It didn't do that before, but there you go.
No, it didn't. No. I got a new message from my car the other day for the very first time ever. I was getting out of the car. It said, "Your phone is still in the car." Wow, isn't technology wonderful? Probably not.
Or you
Now
ever
I'm going to
get one that
try and...
says your wife is still in the car?
That's a bit scary. And now I'm going to try and share the right screen if I can. I never quite know about this, so I'm
It's
hoping
worked
it's
before.
sharing something that says St. Martin's Guild Twin Hunt Methods.
That's right.
Good-o. Well, let's start then. Okay, so this is the 26th of June, I hope. It is St. Martin's Guild. I'm David Smith, so let's proceed, if I can hit the right button. Okay, now before we start, I hope everyone's not muted, because do feel free to sort of say anything you want. Twin hunt methods, by and large, the most obvious one that everyone says they know, well, twin hunt methods, Grandsire, yeah, that's a twin hunt method. Is that the only twin hunt method you know? And if I was going to ask you, and I'm not sort of trying to trap you here, it's a genuine area where there is ambiguity. What do you think a hunt bell means? So first of all, is Grandsire the only twin hunt method you know?
Yep.
Yep, that's a good answer.
I think so.
I think it is me pretty much, yeah.
Yep. And what do you think is meant by a hunt bell? And as I say, this is a genuine question. There is no clear answer to this. What do you think a hunt bell is meant? So in Grandsire, what's the hunt bell?
1 or 2.
Okay, so 1 is a hunt bell and 2 is a hunt bell.
In a plain course.
Yeah.
In a plain course, yes. So a hunt bell means a bell that does what?
Hunts.
Plain hunts.
Plain hunts. Okay, I'm inclined to agree with you on that, and I would certainly therefore say that the treble in Grandsire is a hunt bell, and the 2 is a hunt bell because it hunts, but only until there's a call, and then it swaps and another bell takes over as hunt bell, but that bell plain hunts. So I think I would agree with what you've said there, even though it's a slightly dodgy issue, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Can I also say at this stage that we're going to go quite a lot of stuff in this presentation. I hope it will be, the PowerPoint will be available to everyone afterwards. So if there's something you think, oh, I didn't quite follow that, can we go back a little bit? It will be available later on. Now I'm going to start by actually dealing with something that is nothing to do with twin hunt methods, which is a bit silly. Something I've found in the last year, doing quite a lot of teaching in Ringing Room, is I've come to question this concept as to whether plain bob and Grandsire are the best first methods. Certainly, to some extent, the obvious thing is, yes, well, you've learnt to plain hunt, so now what can we do with plain hunt? Well, let's do plain hunt with a few funny bits, which might be plain bob. It's plain hunting, but you dodge at the lead end. So they're based on plain hunting, but are they the best first methods? Arguably, yes, when you're just learning a method, they are. But touches of Grandsire, I can remember actually not that long ago, it was about 10 years ago for me, touches of Grandsire are really tricky. Touches of plain bob less so, but touches of Grandsire, you've got this, everybody is affected. It's really tricky. You've got this general rule, but only one bell follows the general rule. And I'm not too sure about that. So what I want to look at is, first of all, something that is unashamedly absolutely nothing to do with twin hunt, which is what we're talking about basically today, but a method. I don't know if you've come across it. It's called All Saints doubles. And I seriously put it forward for those of you who are teaching or introducing people to methods for the first time as an alternative to plain bob or Grandsire. And it will lead on to twin hunt methods in a way that will become apparent shortly. Basically, plain bob doubles, which I think is arguably the most common first method that you learn, is plain hunting, except that you do something funny at the lead ends. You do a dodge or you make seconds, which is fine in a tower. If it sort of, to my mind, has always lent on from, okay, we've learned plain hunting, what are we going to do now? But I've found in teaching in Ringing Room, which I certainly admit is a different environment, that I don't know how much you've done in Ringing Room, but a lot of people in ringing room find plain bob doubles or minor really quite tricky because, okay, yes, you plain hump, you know how to do that, but there's this huge sort of big, you know, angst about when do I do something different? When's the treble leading? What do I do? And to some extent, a method that has a fairly clear-cut blue line that is not plain handing all the time, many people in ringing have found a lot easier. So let's have a look at twin hand doubles here. And the main benefit of it is it does have an easy blue line. The treble, I hope you can see the cursor that I'm moving here, certainly just plain, whoops, sorry, goes up to fifths and back. What does everyone else do? Well, every other bell, after it leaves the front, does a crankshaft, which is fifths, fourths, fifths. You can see the blue line here for number 5. Here it's got to the back and it does fifths, fourths, fifths. And every bell, when it gets to the back, does that. Here's the 4, for example, it's starting off in the middle of that, so it does another blow in 4 fifths, and it comes down to the front. What do you do when you come down to the front? One of two things. You either make seconds, which we can see here the 4 is going to do, or you make long thirds. So here we can see bell number 5 is coming down to the front, long thirds and back again. So how do you learn this blue line? It's not as straightforward as plain hunting all the time, except at the lead end. But on the other hand, it's fairly easy to learn. You always do crankshafts at the back. Let's pick up bell number 2 here. Lead, crankshafts, fifths, fourths, fifths. Then you come down to the front. When you reach the front, you do one of two things. You either make long thirds, and this is what the 2 is doing here, or you make seconds. And that's what the 4 is doing here. It comes down to the front and makes seconds. How do you know which? Well, you could do it by some sort of, you know, rote or rule or something, but basically, no. When you get there, you see where the treble is. If the treble takes you off the lead, you make seconds, which is what the 4 is doing here. Alternatively, if you get to the front and the treble doesn't take you off the lead, you make long thirds. Either way, you then go off to the back and you do the crankshafts, fifths, fourths, fifths. So if you made seconds, same again, you make fifths, fourths, fifths. So it's a simple blue line. You always do crankshafts at the back. At the front, on the occasions you come down to the front, you either make long thirds or you make seconds. And you don't decide what to do by some sort of memory. You rely on what the treble's doing at the time. If the treble takes you off the lead, you make seconds. If not, you make thirds. And that's it. That's all there is in a plain course. So I think this is a really good introductory method. Nothing to do with twin hunt, which is what this talk today is about. Apologies for that, but nevertheless, it's a really good early method. I'm not suggesting you run touches of it, but it tells you an awful lot. It's an easy blue line to learn. You always do crankshafts. It teaches you the concept of when you get to the front, I don't know what I'm going to do. Let's wait till I get there. I'm either going to make seconds or long thirds, depending on what the treble's doing. So how you interact with the treble. It introduces the concept of right and wrong places, and this concept of what you do at the front, depending on what the treble's doing. So I really put that to you if you're a rigging master or in charge of what you're doing in your tower, as a really good method for people. Certainly my experience, slightly to my surprise I have to admit, has been that people find that a lot easier than learning plain bob doubles or Grandsire doubles. However, moving on from that, this is a method I came across only fairly recently, which I really like. This is now genuinely a twin hunt method, probably, but I've got to ask you, just looking at that, you've probably never seen this before. It's a really good, simple method. It's a really good method for introducing touches, which I think Grandsire isn't. I certainly admit that Grandsire doubles is a very good first method to learn, but touches of Grandsire doubles are really complicated. So here we've got a method. The 3, 4, and 5 have work that is shown here. So let's look at the work of a bell that's doing the work. You do long thirds. So that's a bit like what we just saw in All Saints. Here is the 3. It does long thirds, So if you start as bell number 3, you've got one more blow in to finish off the long thirds. You come down to the front. Then you go up to the back and you do a double dodge. Then you do the crankshaft, which we've just made in All Saints, which is why I introduced All Saints first. Fifths, fourths, fifths. Then you do a double dodge again. 4 back to 5, that's the dodge. 4 back to 5, that's the dodge. You come down to the front and do long thirds, which is one of the things that we did in All Saints. And then we're back to the beginning again. Long thirds, lead, out to the back, double dodge, crankshafts, fifths, fourths, fifths, double dodge, down to the front, long thirds. Now, my question to you, and again, I'm not trying to catch you out, this is a genuine question. Would you call this a twin hunt method?
I would, I think, because the 2 is just hunting to 4th place and back, except when it meets the treble. Is that right?
A third place, but yes, yes.
Oh, so 3rd place, sorry, 3rd place.
Yep. No, good answer.
I would say not.
Good.
Because,
I'm very glad we've got both answers. I think they're both right.
because it's not doing the same plain hunting every lead.
It's doing the same every lead, but it's not
I
plain
beg your
hunting.
pardon. Yes, I'm sorry. It's not.
Yes.
It's not doing the same throughout the lead.
Yep. Okay. No, I totally agree with both those answers. Is it doing this? Is it a? What I've done in a thing I've written recently is talk about repeated work. So the treble certainly repeats the work, as it does in almost everything except something like Stedman, which is a principle. So the treble repeats the work every time, and that is plain hunting. The 2 does repeat the same work each time, and its work is lead thirds, lead seconds. And because it makes seconds, it picks up seconds place bell work again. So yet again, it does lead thirds, lead seconds, lead thirds, lead second. Does it therefore repeat the work in every lead? Although presumably if there's a call, it'll swap as in Grandsire. Yes, it does. Is that work plain hunting? No, it isn't. So is this a twin hunt method? I really don't know. I find the accepted terminology unacceptable here. It is a repeated work bell, as in Grandsire, but the work that it does isn't plain hunting. So whether you want to call it a plain hunt, whether you want to call it a twin hunt method or not, I don't know. If you mean, are there 2 bells that both of which plain hunt? No, it isn't. If you mean, are there 2 bells that do the same thing each lead? Then yes, it is.
So in what category does the Central Council place it? What heading does it fit under?
Embarrassed to answer that. The Central Council says that a hunt bell, the word hunt, is absolutely nothing to do with hunting, plain or otherwise. It merely means you repeat the same work each lead, other than if assuming there isn't a call. So from their point of view, it is a twin hunt method. Almost everyone I've spoken to says, what? No, don't be silly. A twin hunt method means they both hunt. So of course it isn't. It's not, the 2 isn't hunting. And there's a measure of justification for both points of view. So I'm really not going to take a stance on that. But it certainly is, like Grandsire, a method where there are 2 bells that repeat the same work, one of which might be called out of the, I hesitate to call it out of the hunt, but out of the repeated work if there's a call, and the other of which, the treble, it's clearly a treble-dominated method. Treble clearly does plain hunt. So the answer to the red question there is it's a twin hunt method is yes, don't know. We just got to accept that. But I really admire this method. If you're then describing to people, and I really do admire it, because if you were in a typical tower with reasonably competent ringers, most people can ring this first time. It's reasonably straightforward. If you're a 3, 4, and 5, you are one of the working bells. So what do? Long thirds. So if you start with a 3, you come down to the front. When you go to the back, you do the back work, which is a bit like All Saints, but there's a double dodge. Then you do your crankshafts, fifths, fourths, fifths. Then you double dodge. Then you come down to the front and you make long thirds, and that's the end of a plain course. Slightly more difficult to pick up where the other bells start, but actually they all start from a Grandsire solution. So if you're familiar with the Grandsire, if you're bell number 5, you certainly start with a dodge and then you make fifths, and that's your start. Having made fifths, it's not surprising you'll then do fourths, fifths. You'll pick up the crankshaft, double dodge down to the front. If you start as bell number 4, again, like a Grandsire, you do a retrograde step, and then you carry on down to the front. So that's not too difficult. What does the hunt bell do? As we've already seen, it makes thirds, and then it makes seconds over the treble, thirds, seconds, thirds, seconds. So a straightforward method. In a typical tower with reasonably competent ringers, you can ring it straight off, but it's just something a bit different. And as we've seen, it shakes up your perception. Is this twin hunt or not? Don't know. It just sort of says, well, yes, you can have a bell that repeats the same work in a plain course all the time, but that doesn't have to be plain hunting. And here it definitely isn't. It's seconds, thirds, seconds, thirds. So just a little bit different. Very good for shaking people up. The other benefit of it is that at a call, and there's only one call, which I prefer to call a single, some authors call it a bob, what do you do? And the nice thing about it is, as in sort of plain bob, if you're one of the bells at the back, you're completely unaffected. You do exactly the same. That's, to my mind, the big drawback of Grandsire is that at a call, everybody is affected, and that really requires a lot of mental effort. Here, what happens is if you are the, I'll call it the hunt bell. We've agreed to be not quite sure whether it's hunting or not. If you're the hunt bell, so you would have made seconds, instead, when a single is called, you go out to make thirds and come back. Having made thirds, you pick up thirds place work, so you become one of the working bells. Equally, if you were going to make long thirds, you don't. You make thirds, only 2 blows. You come down at the lead end, you pick up seconds place bell, so you become the hunt bell, or whatever you want to call it, the repeated work bell. And also that is quite familiar in some ways. If you just look at this here, if you weren't looking at the context, you've probably said, oh, you're looking at Grandsire. We're looking at a Grandsire bob, where there's early thirds and late thirds make, or a Grandsire single, where you have long thirds and a bell makes seconds underneath. Now, in fact, that's not the way it works, but actually, what happens is exactly the same. We've got the concept of early thirds or late thirds, and what, to my mind, is so nice about this method is the only bells affected are those coming out of the hunt. So instead of seconds, you proceed to make thirds, and then become a working bell, or you go into the hunt. So instead of long thirds, you curtail it after only 2 blows in thirds, and you come down and you pick up seconds place work, so you become the hunt bell. So if you're interested in that, I don't suggest you immediately sort of cotton onto this tonight, but if you want to do a 120, which is an extent, I would suggest you ring the 2, because the only bells that are affected at any call are those that go out of the hunt or into the hunt. So call yourself out at the first lead end. One of the nice things about this method is if you're at the back, rather like in plain bob, if you think well, my next work is dodging in 5/6, you're not worried about the call of a bob or not. You just know you're going to be unaffected. And the same is true here. Once you've left the front work and you go to the back, you don't have to worry about whether there's going to be a call or not, because you know you're going to be unaffected. So from the point of view of the 2, if you call yourself out at the first lead end, then at the next opportunity you call yourself back in, but that means two plain lead ends. When you go out to the back, you do your double dodge, you do your crankshafts or whatever you call them, you come back in again. You don't need to worry about when the lead end is then, because you're unaffected. You don't make a call, but as soon as you come back to the stage where you were going to make long thirds, that's when you call yourself, you call a single, and you go back into the hunt. And immediately at the next lead end, you call yourself out again. And if you repeat that, you will find you've got a 120. So you, as the calling bell, you've been in the hunt, you call yourself out, but next opportunity you also go in again and immediately out, in again and immediately out. So you've had 3 leads in which you are the hunt bell, but they've been well separated. Everybody else will see here, it's the 4 here that becomes the hunt bell, and it does 3 leads as the hunt bell, and then it's called out, and it's the 5 that becomes the hunt bell. It does 3 leads, and then it loses and goes back into being a working bell, and then the 3 here does 3 leads. So every single working bell has got 3 leads as the hunt bell. 3, 4, and 5 each have 3 leads in a row. The 2 comes in and back out again, in and back out again. So it also has 3 leads doing that, but they are 1 lead at a time, and that indeed gives you an extent. And I've tried this in a number of towers, and almost all towers of reasonable competence, quite remarkably, can get this first time, which I think for Grandsire you really can't do. So I really do recommend that method to you. And indeed, this talk is about twin hunt methods, and we've agreed to differ about whether it's actually a twin hunt method, but certainly it's an interesting variation for people who think twin hunt always means only Grandsire. No, here we've got a bell which does repeated work unless there's a call, but that repeated work is not plain hunting. It's seconds, thirds, seconds. So I really do suggest you have a look at that. It's a really nice and fairly easy method. But we're going actually to talk in this talk more about twin hunt methods, most
David,
of which
can I just
yes,
interrupt you
indeed,
very
absolutely.
briefly? Just an
Yes.
appropriate thing. There's been a couple of questions come in, but one from Mike Keeble, who says in foil doubles, why is it called a single and not a bob? Now my thoughts are it's because there's only 2 bells affected, which is the usual single rule, isn't it?
Yes. I didn't actually discover this method till quite recently. That's a brilliant question. And I found, looking up on whatever website it is, where you look at sort of compositions, there are compositions of this recorded. Some people call it a bob, some people call it a single. And I originally thought, oh, gee,
yeah.
what's a bob and what's a single? And the answer is they're both the same. Some composers choose to call it a bob, some composers choose to call it a single.
Yeah.
I vote for calling it a single in a session like this, which is a theory session, because as you've said, 2 bells only swap. And the general rule is that 2 bells swap at a single and 3 at a bob.
It's a bob, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Having said that, when you come to call it in real life, bob is much easier to say than singles.
Well, I'm going to throw the cat among the pigeons here, because donkeys years ago I cottoned onto foil doubles and we rang it for several ringing weekends. But we didn't ring it with bobs or singles. We rang it with omits and extremes.
Oh, nice.
But okay. I'm not going to go into that because that takes us off topic. But those are 2 of the calls that you occasionally use, and they're called that for a reason. But I don't want to discuss that now. And the other quick one from Ollie is there such a thing as twin treble bobbing? And I'm guessing probably not, because there wouldn't be enough room to do anything else around it.
I haven't. I think that's a very good question. Also, let me just go back to the first question. First of all, you're quite right. Everything that you've said. The moral is that a method is a method, and the calls are not part of the intrinsic definition of the method. Calls are up to the individual people to decide on the day.
Yeah.
And the answer is that some people call the call here. There is only one call. Some people call it a bob. Some people call it a single. Who's right? Neither. It's entirely up to you to define.
Yeah, as long as the rest of the band know what you're doing.
Yes. I've just actually learned. I've been following Simon Limson's Pickled Egg. I can ring the standard 8, and I've just learned Cornwall. And I'm very worried about in Cornwall, does a bob mean a 4th place bob or a 6th place bob? And the answer is check with the conductor.
That's it, yeah.
Because some people do one, some people do another. And apparently, I'm out of my depth here, but apparently one of them is better if you're just doing quick touches, and the other one is better if you're trying to compose a quarter peal.
Yeah.
So moral is, please tell me what you mean by a bob or a single, and you know, it's whatever you decide on the day. So let's go back to the second question. What was that?
Is there such a thing as a twin treble bobbing method?
I haven't found one.
I've never come across one. Yeah.
There's no reason why not, and I think there ought to be.
Okay.
Anyway, going on to Herwin.
Right.
Most twin hunt methods are extensions, and I'm going to look at from minor to triples, but when it really could be anything, obtained by adding a second hunt bell. And let's be entirely clear here, we've agreed to differ a bit on what a hunt bell is, but I'm going to talk about here that a second hunt bell really does plain hunt. It doesn't do, like in poils, seconds, thirds, seconds, or anything odd like that. It plain hunts. So the question is, what is the most obvious example of a method generated by adding a second hunt bell to a well-known and established method?
Grandsire again.
Well done. Yeah.
From Plain Bob.
Absolutely, well done. Most people would not answer that. They would. We're going to look at shortly at St Clement's as a good example. But the most obvious example of adding a second hunt bell is Plain Bob going to Grandsire. Plain Bob is essentially an even bell method, but certainly there are odd bell. You know, you can certainly ring Plain Bob doubles and triples. But if you regard it as predominantly an even bell method, if you put in a second hunt bell, it becomes Grandsire. So let's have a look at that at the moment. So let's look at Plain Bob as an even bell method, Plain Bob minor, for example, and let's try and extend it. To do that, we've got to try and say, well, what is the essence of Plain Bob? And I think the answer to that is, as we said earlier on, you plain hunt all the time, but at the lead end, a bell makes seconds, and that causes the bell, all the bells above that to dodge, and that just gives you that little essence of change, which allows you to keep it going, and you carry on plain hunting until the next lead end, and then again a bell makes seconds, and another bell, then all the other bells dodge over that. So let's take that concept as the sort of defining rule of Plain Bob and see how we could extend it by adding a second hunt bell. So let's start off very straightforwardly. This is Plain Bob minor, except we're adding an extra bell, so it goes up to bell number 7, the 8's covering, and we've got a second hunt bell. So there we've got the 1 and the 2. Okay. How are we going to then extend that further? And the first thing we've got to say is, well, one of the things in Plain Bob is, basically the defining quality of it is you make seconds over the treble when it's leading, over the hunt bell. Hang on, we've got 2 hunt bells, plural. So you've got to make seconds over both hunt bells. But you can't do that, there are 2 of them. So we've got to make it thirds. Because there are 2 hunt bells, a bell makes thirds over the hunt bells. Next comment to make from that is, I think, probably one of the most weird and peculiar things. If you're going to make thirds when these 2 hunt bells are leading, we find that this also happens right at the beginning, because right at the beginning here, we've got the treble leading and then the 2 leading, and it's when the treble and the 2 leads, or the hunt bell leads, that's when we make thirds. So this funny stuff isn't just something that happens a bit later on after we've rung a full lead. It happens right at the beginning. Because here you make thirds over these 2 bells, you've got to make thirds right at the very start. And as in you taking Plain Bob as the thing from which we're extending, the whole point about Plain Bob is that when a bell makes seconds over the treble, so here thirds over both hunt bells, the bells above dodge. So we're going to have dodges there and there. And what else do you do? Well, other than that, you just fill in with plain hunting the whole time. So the rest of the time, plain hunting is what everybody does, and that allows us to fill in all the rest, which becomes a bit of a jumble. But basically, from those prime points we had in the previous screen, if you fill in plain hunting from that, that's what you get, and you get Grandsire. So let's just summarize that. What's different between Grandsire with a second hunt bell and Plain Bob? First of all, there are 2 hunt bells. Well, yes, of course there are. That's the whole premise. That's where we started from. So there are 2 hunt bells, not 1. Secondly, instead of making seconds over the treble, we make thirds over both the hunt bells, and that thirds is wrong. And when a place is made like that, be it seconds or thirds, we dodge above it. So because in Grandsire the place is made in thirds, we're going to dodge in 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8, 9, or 10, 11, you know, depending on how many bells we're ringing, rather than 3, 4, and 5, 6. And they're wrong instead of right.
Can you just explain wrong and right very quickly, please, David?
Yeah. Normally, if you make places, right means hand stroke, backstroke. So if in plain bob, I'm coming up to make seconds, I come down and I lead, hand stroke, backstroke. I then make seconds, hand stroke, backstroke. Then I lead again, hand stroke, backstroke. That's called right, hand stroke and backstroke for a place. Wrong means the wrong way round, your backstroke and hand stroke. Everybody's met that. If you're plain hunting on 6, you go lead, lead, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Your places at the back are right, they're hand stroke, backstroke. But if you're only ringing 5 bells, lead, lead, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4. So your 2 blows at the back are a backstroke and a hand stroke, and that's what's called wrong. So similarly here in Grandsire, if we are making places in thirds, we go lead, lead, right, 2, 3, 3, 2. So the 2 blows in 3 are in thirds place are wrong in the sense that they are lead, lead, 2, 3, a backstroke in thirds position, 3, 2. My second blow in thirds position is at hand stroke. So it's back hand, not hand back. And that's what's called wrong.
Thanks for that.
A crucial thing about this, which is really, really very significant, is that the backward step of the dodges in Grandsire is made just after the treble lead, because that's when the bell makes thirds, which means that we start off with a dodge. As you know, if you ring Grandsire, you immediately start with a dodge, whereas in plain bob, you go all the way through to the lead end before you do your first actual funny stuff. And that's a consequence of this fact that the bell making thirds makes them wrong. So in Grandsire, if you happen to be ringing bell number 3, you immediately start off by ringing 3 and another blow in 3 right at the very beginning, and therefore the bells above you dodge right at the very beginning. So if in Grandsire you happen to be ringing bell number 4, we all know that even bells hunt down to the front. But in Grandsire, you start with a dodge. So you go 5, 4 before you go down to the front. So bells start with dodges, or if you happen to be bell number 3 a place, rather than, okay, we'll plain hunt all the way through to the next lead end before we actually have to do anything. So that's a big difference. We'll come back to this screen in a minute. Okay, so what we're going to look at now, having agreed that plain bob adding a second hunt bell becomes Grandsire, let's look at some other even bell methods. St. Clement's we'll look at first of all. Here's the blue line for St. Clement's, just in case you haven't done it. What is the rule for, what defines St. Clement's? Because if we're going to extend it, we've really got to say, well, the essence of St. Clement's is what? Well, I think the answer is that most of the time, here we are, look at this bell, you do plain hunt, but only between the back fifths and thirds place. Here we are again, fifths with the dodge, thirds, fifths, thirds. But you still make dodges when there's a lead end. So let's now look at that a bit more thoroughly. Here we are on bell number 3. We're plain hunting to the back, down only to thirds. So the back, oh, there's a lead end here, so we better dodge. So here we throw in our dodge, 5 back to 4, 2 blows in 5, thirds, fifths, oh, coming down to the front, treble's leading, let's do a dodge. 5, 4, 5, 4, 3, 3, 3, 2, 5, 5. So the essence of St. Clement's is that you plain hunt between thirds and the back, you still have a dodge at the lead end, and on occasion, having done here the dodge from 3 to 4, we head down to the front. Now that's obviously going to be different. We've just explained that the essence of St. Clement's is that you plain hunt between the back and thirds, but here we are coming in under thirds. What are we going to do? And the answer is you come down to the front, you fiddle around for a while, dodging in 1, 2 until the treble gets in the way, and then you do leads, seconds at the lead end, lead, and then again, you fiddle around at the front, dodging in 1, 2 for as long as you can, until the treble gets in the way, and then you come out, treble lead, 4 back to 3, and then you're back into your business of hunting between 5th place and 3rd place. So if we take that as the sort of defining concept for St. Clement's, how are we going to extend it? One way of extending it is to do exactly how we generate plain bob. I've gone to doubles here, not triples, could have done either. We could extend it in exactly the same way as we get plain bob doubles. Instead of dodging in 3/4, dodging in 5/6, we actually at one stage do long fifths instead, which is the best way of dodging with yourself. I mean, it's probably illegal, except in the modern politically correct thing between consenting adults, dodging with yourself is probably okay. So we dodge in 3/4. Instead of dodging in 5/6 one time and dodging in 6/5 another time, because there is no 6th place, we make long fifths. And that's a perfectly valid extension. So here we are. We're starting as 2. We do front work, exactly the same as in the minor version. We do some dodging. We go out, we dodge 3/4, and then we dodge between the back, which is 5ths, not 6ths, back to 3rds. Out to the back, dodge in 5/6. Oh, no, sorry, you can't dodge in 5/6. There is no 6. Let's do long 5ths, 3rds, and come down and do that. And then we're back to the front work again. Perfectly valid extension. It's exactly the same way as plain bob extends from plain bob minor to plain bob triples, and that's fine. Except that this is called St. Simon's, and I'm sure you've rung St. Simon's doubles, and St. Triples works exactly the same way. Perfectly valid extension, but it doesn't get the same name. It doesn't get called St. Clement's. The other way, which is what we're going to consider today, is adding a second hunt bell, and this is the extension that gets the name of St. Clement's. And that's fine, but we must be aware, why, therefore, isn't Grandsire called plain bob? If we extend plain bob by adding a second hunt bell, if we take plain bob minor and make a triples method, it becomes Grandsire. Shouldn't that be called plain bob triples? Well, the answer is yes, according to what the Central Council deems to be the general naming convention. But unfortunately, or fortunately, plain bob and Grandsire existed so many hundreds of years before the Central Council did that they are exceptions. Plain bob, you can add a second hunt bell and it changes its name to Grandsire. Or if you do the sort of fiddle of making long places at the back, long 5ths in plain bob doubles, long 7ths in plain bob triples, it's still called plain bob. Equally, Grandsire is an odd bell method mostly. You can ring Grandsire doubles, you can ring Grandsire triples, you can also ring Grandsire minor, I don't know if any of you have, and you do the same fix. You just do long places at the back. I find in practice, if you go along to a ringing practice somewhere where you're not known and you say, why don't we ring Grandsire minor? Everybody goes silent and they sort of say, well, have you seen a doctor about that? Okay, it's a really weird sort of suggestion, but in exactly the same as plain bob minor can be expanded to plain bob triples or doubles by just doing long places at the back. So can Grandsire. If you ring Grandsire minor, you do long places at the back. It's a perfectly valid method, and I really recommend you do it just on occasion, because it's something different. It's easy to do. But the point I'm making here is that these are exceptions to the general naming convention. Normally, if you took plain bob minor and added a second hunt bell to get Grandsire, it would keep the name plain bob, but plain bob and Grandsire don't. St. Clement's, however, does. So let's look at St. Clement's. What we've done here is we've taken St. Clement's and we've added a second hunt bell, which you can see is there in orange, and we've just done exactly what we did before, except that the fill-in rules have been, what is the essence of St. Clement's? And as we already said, it's going to 3rds in the back. So if you happen to be ringing bell number 7, what do? Well, you plain hunt down to 3rds and out to the back again. Down to 3rds, out to the back again. Except that whenever the treble leads, or around the treble lead, you do a dodge. Exactly the same as with Grandsire, there is a slightly unexpected byproduct that you start by doing a dodge, because a bell is going to start by making thirds. It's the 3. Therefore, everybody starts with a dodge. So we start 7, odd bell, it's going to head out. But now we'll start with a dodge, back to 6, out, and then we head out, but we're at the back, so we bounce off the back, thirds. A dodge there, thirds, out to the back, dodge here. When you dodge in 4/5, that's the time, rather similar to in St Clement's Minor, where it's a 3/4 dodge. That's the time you go down to the front. What do you do at the front? Exactly the same as you did in St Clement's Minor. You dodge in 1/2 until the treble gets in the way, and then you go out and make seconds. So from the 7th's point of view, okay, extra hunt bell. So we start with a dodge. Ah, yes, very good point. Thank you. Thirds back with dodges. When you come down here, you do your front work, and as you very correctly point out, no, you can't make seconds, which is what we did before. There are 2 hunt bells, and you have to make places over both of them. So you make thirds over both the hunt bells. Then you come down to the front, and then you do your dodging, and you head out, and you dodge, and you go back to the 5ths, 3rds, 5ths. So that really encapsulates the difference of what happens, exactly as going from plain bob to Grandsire, of when you add a second hunt bell. The dodges are wrong, and they're in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, instead of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just before we go any further, you remember this slide we had earlier. In Grandsire, unlike plain bob, by adding a second hunt bell, of course there are 2 hunt bells, not 1. That's the whole object of the exercise. Thirds is made over the hunt bells. There are 2 of them, not seconds, and it's therefore wrong, not right. The dodges aren't in 3, 4, but they're in 4, 5, and so on. The backward step is, it's a wrong dodge, I'm saying there basically, and this means that bells start with dodges or places rather than, in plain bob, having to wait to the first lead end. But we've been looking not at extending plain bob to Grandsire, we've been looking at St Clement's. No difference. All those points exactly the same as before.
The other thing worth chipping in, if I might just add as well, David, is
yes,
when you go from minor to triples, there are still only 3 dodges on the front.
Yes.
There are some variations where if you've only got 1 hunt bell, you add an extra dodge, but with this you don't.
Yep. That's precisely why, in explaining it earlier, I was trying to say, when if you're coming into the front work, you dodge in 1, 2 until the treble gets in the way.
That's right, yeah.
How long will that take? And the answer, exactly as you said, is in both in triples and minor, it's the same number of dodges. It's a triple dodge. If you ever actually ring, which I don't recommend, St Clement's Maximus, you dodge for about a week. And the number of dodges is far too many to count, and you wait until the treble comes down and get in the way. But yes, exactly as you said, St Clement's triples and St Clement minors is actually the same number of dodges in each case. So we finish up with this method, and I do want to make one further point here. It's a lovely method. It's one of the ones that in Brisbane it's one of our service touches. I find it's a very tuneful method because of the dodging at the front. And just to pick up what do you do in St Clement's triples, if you're bell number 7, for example, because it is indeed one of these Grandsire-ish methods, you start with a dodge. You're then hunting between thirds and the back, dodging wherever the treble leads, thirds and the back, dodging when the treble leads. When you finish up dodging in 4/5 and come down to the front, you dodge. As you've said, it's a triple dodge, same as in minor, until the treble gets in the way, and then you make seconds. No, as somebody pointed out, it's thirds because there are 2 hunt bells, and then you come down and carry on. I do specifically make the point that places and dodges are right if you're below the treble. So for example, where's the places made? Here. Places made here are right Then you go out to make thirds wrong. You're over the two hunting bells. When you come down to the front, you're right here, hand stroke, backstroke. These dodges are right. And then these dodges, because you're above the trebles, are wrong. Sevenths at the back is wrong. Coming down to thirds is right, and so on. If you wish to take this further, I'm not suggesting you should immediately sort of grasp all this straight away. If you want to ring a touch of St. Clement's triples, which I recommend, bobs and singles, if you're with a reasonably competent band, you just say it's exactly like Grandsire. A very good touch, which I recommend, is bob single plain, bob single plain, bob single plain, 4 times all up. Why? Firstly, the hunt bells, the 2, I don't suggest you try and absorb all this straight away, although I'm sure this will be distributed later on. But each time there's a bob, the 2, which is the original hunt bell, comes out of the hunt by a double dodge 4-5 down, as in Grandsire, and the 3 goes in. At the single, the 2 comes back into the hunt, and at the plain, obviously it stays in the hunt. So the 2 basically comes out of the hunt for 1 lead, goes back in again, and then stays there. Out, back in, stays there. The only other hunt bell is always the 3. The 3 at the bob comes into the hunt, and at the single it leaves the hunt, and it does something else, whatever the plain lead end is. And at the next bob, it is again the 3. So it's always the 2 and the 3. So if you're conducting it and you're not sure, you know, if there's a bit of a muddle, the 2 is the hunt bell all the time, except when the 3 comes in. No one else does. And other bells, interestingly, sort of feel they're doing the same work. So for example, if you're the 7, you start off with a dodge. At the single, it's actually the same position that you dodge in, but you do a double dodge at the bob, and at the single, yet again, you're still repeating the same work yet again. It's only at the plain lead end that you sort of progress 1, and at that lead end, you're going to dodge you've moved 1 forward, you're dodging elsewhere. Then again, there's a bob and a single, and you're stuck as the same place bell, and only at the next one do you actually make any progress. Then you have an interlude at the front, as do all the other bells, and when you come out again here, here's the one where you come out of the front work, you finish up in 5th place bell, and then at the bob, you double dodge 4-5, so you're again 5th place bell, and at the single again you double dodge 4-5, so you're again 5th place bell. So all the bells at the back feel that, yes, I'm doing something, I'm dodging in this position, oh, there's a bob, I'll double dodge in the same position. Oh, there's a single. I'll double dodge in the same position, and only at the plain lead end do you make progress. So I'm not asking you to assimilate that straight away, but it is a very straightforward touch. It's a very easy one to see what's going on, and it's very tuneful, and I really recommend it. So to finish up with, I've no idea what the time is. Very good. Let's look at double Oxford. Again, if you're familiar with double Oxford, great. If not, don't worry too much. But it's one of the many methods, which is a minor method, an even bell method, which you can extend by adding a second hunt bell. Here we're looking at double Oxford minor. What is its defining rule? Well, you start off exactly as you do in St. Clement's, which you've just been looking at. Full lead, triple dodge, out, and you then do a dodge. What is interesting about this method, I really like it as a method actually, is you in a plain course, you're at the front, then you do some stuff in the middle and you get to the back, you spend a long time at the back, and then via the middle you come back to the front. So you don't whiffle between the front and the back continuously as you do in lots of methods. You're at the front, you go through the middle to the back, through the middle to the front, and that's it. That's all you do. It's a double method, double Oxford. So here we are doing front work, which is exactly the same as St. Clement's. Full lead, triple dodge, out to dodge in 3-4. Forget about the middle work for the moment. When you get to the back, because it's a double method, you do at the back exactly what you do at the front. So you double dodge in 1-2, You lead, you make seconds over the treble, and oh, sorry, we're at the back, sorry. So I should have said, because it's reflected, you get to the back and you double dodge, not in 1-2, but in 5-6. You then lead, lie. You then make seconds over the, you make fifths under the treble, and then you you lie again, and then you do your triple dodge. So all this work here, triple dodge, lead, seconds, lead, triple dodge, is exactly the same as you did at the front, but it isn't leading, it's lying. It's not seconds, it's fifths under the treble, not seconds over the treble. Lead again, lie again, triple dodge. So the only bit we've got to fill in is what do you do in the sort of transition period in the middle? And the answer is in this method, and it's a defining part of it. So I've said here the rule is St. Clement's front work and St. Clement's front work at the back, inside out. What do you do in the middle? You dodge. You then make places, fourths, thirds, and then another dodge, and that's it. And it's exactly the same when you leave the back. A dodge, places, places, another dodge, and then you're down the front. And interestingly, in the middle of those places, you cross the treble. So if you're coming out of front work, 3-4 dodge at the lead end, fourths, thirds, crossing the treble, dodge, blah, 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 here we go. And coming out at the end, dodge, thirds, fourths, and the treble goes through at that point, dodge, and into the front work. How do we extend that? Pretty much the same. If you're the 2, you start by making, you've just made seconds over the treble. Oh, sorry, there are 2 hunt bells. So you start, if you're that bell, in making thirds. Then you're down to the front work, exactly the same as in the minor version, and then you go out. But the dodge on the way out isn't 3-4, it's 4-5. But you still have this idea of doing places in the middle work, but you've got 2 hunt bells got to go through in between, in the middle. So it's fifths, thirds. Not fourths and thirds as it was before, it's fifths and thirds because you've got to get the 2 hunt bells through. But you still dodge, places, places, dodge, but the places are further apart because of the need to put 2 hunt bells through. You then go to the back and you do your triple dodge. You lead, lie. You then make seconds under the treble. No. You make places just under the hunt bells. So it's not in 1 short of the back, it's 2 short of the back. So it's in fifths place. You then go to back and lead again. You finish your back work or front work, reflected, whatever you want to call it. And then again, exactly as we did in minor, you dodge, places, places, dodge, but the 2 places are no longer adjacent, they're thirds and fifths because you've got to leave room for both hunt bells to go through. Now, the really important point that I want to make there, that is true of an awful lot of these things, is notice how the dodges and the places, every time you're below the treble, they're right. Every time you're above the trebles, both hunt bells, they're wrong. And that is a really important point here. So actually in this diagram here, I've actually put these extra lines in to show hand back, hand back. So thirds place bell, leads, right, hand stroke, backstroke. Dodge, right, dodge, right, dodge, right. It then goes out to do a dodge here that's wrong, and its places, now, we're above the trebles, these are wrong. When it makes fifths, backstroke, handstroke. Then it comes down to its other places, handstroke, backstroke. Why? Because now we're under the trebles, under the hunt bells. Another dodge goes out to the back. Everything at the back is wrong. So for example, we've done dodging wrong here. Here we're lying, and it's backstroke, handstroke, wrong. We come back to make seconds, except that with 2 hunt bells, it's thirds, and it's flipped. So it's not thirds, it's thirds from the back. That's right, handstroke, backstroke, because we're under the trebles, the hunt bells. Head out to the back, and we're making places here wrong because we're over the trebles. All this dodging is wrong, and then we come down and do a dodge places. These places are right. We're under the trebles. Both trebles pass through us, and then we make further places. These places are wrong because we're now above. That dodge is wrong. Come down to the front, and all this is right again. So there's an enormous amount to learn from that. So that's it. I really do suggest, there's been an awful lot of this. We've covered a lot, a huge variety of sort of competence levels, but I do suggest that you have a look at All Saints. Nothing to do with twin hunt methods at all, but it's a really, really good method if you happen to be a ringing master and in your tower you're wanting to do something different. If you've got learners, it's really good for them. If you've got quite experienced people, they will do it straight off, ring a plain course, no trouble at all, but it's just something a bit different to sort of, oh, let's do something a bit different today. Piles, I thoroughly recommend for the same reason. Oops, I think I've finished there. It's a really good, method for beginners. It's a very good introduction to touches, but if you are with a fairly competent band, they will almost certainly ring it first time, and they will get the touches right first time. And I thoroughly recommend, of all the more conventional twin hunt methods, I think St. Clement's is a very musical, it's very attractive. We tend to do it in Brisbane as our service touch. It's a very nice method to do, and there are some very straightforward touches that are worthwhile. If you want to go further than that, double Oxford, single court, lots of methods can be extended, and that's really getting, that's pushing the brain power a bit there. But that's it. Let me try and start my video because I think you'll be frozen. That's better.
Okay,
yes.
lost you. So I'm now going to stop the recording at that point. So